Last week, we took a look at the practice of Sabbath. Take some time with your group to discuss what that practice was like for you. What was a beneficial part of that practice, or what was a difficult part of that practice for you?
Right now, we live in a culture that is full of skimming and speed reading and scrolling, and we do this almost all day long. And what we miss is that this sort of culture, this sort of engaging with things, deeply impacts how we engage with the Bible, or what we're going to call the Scriptures. And what happens when we do it this way, when we engage with the Bible and the Scriptures in that same way, is that we end up just staying right there on the surface of the text and missing some of the more beautiful and deeper truths that are right there just below. A great way to undo this is to step into a slow reading of Scripture. Maybe another way to think of it is to step into a meditating upon Scripture. Psalm chapter 1 speaks to this. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water that yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. In all that he does, he prospers. So that word there that the psalmist used for meditate in verse 2, that's actually a really cool word. It's the Hebrew word hagah. And it's fascinating because it's used throughout the Old Testament in a bunch of different ways. And the one I want to point us to is in Isaiah chapter 31, verse 4, where he's talking about a lion that's growling over his prey. And the word that is growling is the word hagah. And so it gives us this wonderful idea of what meditation looks like. Because when you think about a lion growling over its prey, its most recent kill, it's not just horking it down. It's not trying to just eat it as fast as it can. But what you see is a lion, it's almost savoring it. The lion is taking its time. It's chewing. It's, in a sense, enjoying it. And this is the concept of what the writer means when they talk about the idea of meditate. Enjoying it, savoring it, spending time chewing through it. And the reality is we do this in a lot of areas of our life. Think about maybe the text that you receive from somebody that you really, really like, or maybe you're even in love with, or a letter that you've gotten from somebody that you deeply respect, or even back when you were in high school and somebody wrote some kind message in your yearbook. Now, when you think back on that, what you realize is you didn't just read it and toss it, or read it and delete it, or just skim over it in the yearbook, but you actually spend some time reading through that, chewing on it, dissecting each word. What is this person saying? Is there something there that's deeper that I can pick up on? Do they like me like I like them? Or is this person deeply appreciative of me? What does it mean when they share their appreciation? This is what it looks like to meditate. And this is something that we're called to do and get the opportunity to do with Scripture. And when we realize that this is a way that we can engage with Scripture, that this is something that we can do with Scripture, what we start to discover is that there's something deeper. There's something right there below the surface that calls us into it, and we get to experience God in a brand new way. Later on in your discussion, you'll have the chance and opportunity to explore different methods and ways of Scripture reading. But for the moment, I just want to highlight 3 of them. So the first one I want to talk about is what we're going to call participant reading. And in this one, you're reading a passage as if you were a participant in the passage. And so what you would do is you would go find a passage and picture yourself as being a part of that passage, as somebody who's in there with it. And so what you're going to ask yourself is, what do I hear, see, feel, taste, smell, think as I engage in this passage? And then maybe if there's multiple people in the passage, change it up, be a different participant. And in doing so, you're going to discover kind of what it means to be a part of that story or that passage. The Gospels are great ways to do this. For example, you could go to the book of Mark and read about how Jesus gets baptized and John is doing the baptism, and he's doing baptisms beforehand. And you could first choose to say, okay, I'm going to be somebody who goes out and actually gets baptized by John. What's that going to be like? And then maybe you step back and you say, okay, now I'm going to look at this passage and read it through the sense of what does it mean to be John and be doing these baptisms, be engaging with Jesus. And then maybe you're simply saying, okay, I'm going to be somebody sitting on the shore of the river, just watching what's going on. What are you hearing, seeing, thinking, observing through all of this? And you can do this with multiple different ways and multiple different people, but the point is to get yourself in that story and think about, okay, how does this engage me? The second one I want to talk about goes back to the idea of meditation, and we're going to call it meditation and internalization. And with this one, again, you're just going to find a passage. It's not going to be a long one, but maybe a brief, maybe a verse or two. And with this, you're going to daily approach this and read this through, maybe multiple times a day. And as you read through it, you're not just reading for the sake of reading, but you're pausing on it, you're exploring it, you're asking yourselves, what in this verse, in this passage encourages me? What challenges me? What do I need to wrestle with? And each time you read through it, ask those questions and wrestle with it and discover the answer to those questions that you've just asked. And as you do this throughout the week, what you're going to find is that this passage, these verses slowly become a part of you. They work their way into you, and they start to create a deep impact on how you understand what that piece of scripture is saying. But in addition to that, it's starting to create an impact on how you understand yourself, how you understand God, how you understand how He views the world around us. After a week is over, have faith that, that passage is going to stick with you, that things are going to work out, and when you need to reflect back on that passage, it's going to come to you. But set that passage aside, and then starting next week, choose a different passage and do the same process over again. So the third method that I want to talk about is called Lectio Divina. And you're going to have an opportunity again later in your discussion to really explore fully what this is. But I just thought I'd give you kind of an overview as we go through this video. And so the first step in Lectio Divina is Lectio, and this is simply reading, but reading in a way that you're paying attention to what you're reading and that you're doing so with the intention of encountering God as you read through things. The second step is a step called Meditatio, and this just simply means meditation again. And really what we're doing here is we're focusing perhaps on a word or a phrase that jumps out to us and really spending time on that and even asking ourselves, God, what are you trying to reveal to me? What are you trying to tell me through this word or phrase? Third step, Oratio, and this simply means prayer. You're spending some time in prayer, you've stepped away from the passage, but now you're praying maybe through the passage, over the passage, and really the thing that you're doing here is, as you've read through that passage, you're now saying, God, is there something I want to say to you? And so maybe you want to say that, or maybe there's a question that you want to ask God about this passage that you would like Him to reveal more to you about. But this step is just simply spending some time in prayer. The final step is Contemplatio, and this simply means to contemplate. And I love this step because what this step does is that you actually step back again, you stop reading your passage and you simply sit and you contemplate. And when we say contemplate, what we mean is not necessarily contemplate and think about the passage you just read, but actually pause and contemplate, thinking about, what is God telling me right now about me? And it's even just saying, I'm going to rest in the love of God and experience that, because I've now, as I've gone through this passage, been able to center myself on God and His love.
As you read scripture this week, see it not as something to be done, but as an opportunity to see what God is doing and how to partner with Him.